You turn on the news, you scroll through social media, and it seems like political conflict is just everywhere. Protests, heated debates, constant power struggles. But what if these aren't just random flare-ups? Today we're going to dig into a really powerful idea, that this conflict isn't an accident. It's actually a built-in, logical part of the whole relationship between a government and its people. And if we can understand why it happens, well, that changes how we see everything.
Right? It really feels like society is always on edge, like we're just lurching from one conflict to the next. But is it just a bunch of random disagreements? Or is there something deeper, something structural going on that maybe we're not seeing? Okay, here it is. This is the core idea from our source material, and it's a real game changer. It says that political conflict isn't an accident. It's not a bug in the system. It's a logical, almost predictable product of institutional domination. That's a huge claim, so let's spend some time unpacking what that really means. So here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll look at the basic power dynamic between the state and its citizens. Then, we'll see how public policy itself can become the flashpoint for trouble. After that, we'll make it all real with a case study about land reclamation in Jakarta. And we'll wrap it all up by reflecting on why seeing conflict as logical is so important. All right, section 1. Let's start at the very beginning with the fundamentals, the power relationship between the state and us, the citizens. Before we can even talk about conflict, we have to grasp the power imbalance that's baked into this relationship from day one. So, this crucial idea comes from the sociologist Max Weber. He said the state holds a monopoly on legitimate violence. That sounds kind of heavy, but all it really means is that the government is the only one legally allowed to use physical force. Think police, military, to make sure its rules are followed. This isn't just about cracking down on crime. It's the very foundation of its power to make laws, collect taxes, and, govern. And this imbalance, it has real, tangible consequences. On one side, you've got the state with its powers. It makes the rules, it takes the resources, and enforces its decisions. And on the other side, you have the implications for us. We end up dependent on their policies, our access to resources gets limited by their rules, and because of this setup, conflict basically becomes a feature of the system, not an error. Okay, so how does this big, abstract idea of a power imbalance actually show up in our day-to-day lives? Well, that brings us right to our second section, unjust public policy. This is where the rubber meets the road. It's where state power gets really concrete, and it's so often the spark that lights the fire. And this right here is the absolute heart of the matter. You have to understand this. No policy is ever truly neutral. Every single law, every budget, every regulation, it's a political product. And because of that, it always chooses sides. It creates winners and losers. And here's exactly how that plays out. For any policy, you've got your beneficiaries. These are the groups who get the advantages, the subsidies, the legal protections. And then you've got the burden bearers, the ones who have to deal with the negative stuff like pollution or getting displaced from their homes. And when that division between who wins and who loses feels deeply unfair, well, that's the perfect recipe for political conflict. But of course, people don't just sit back and take it. In a democracy, there are ways to fight back. There are official channels for resistance. You can challenge laws in court. You can take to the streets and protest. You can lobby politicians, try to change their minds. You can even get involved in how the budget is made. These are the tools people use to push back. Okay, enough theory. Let's make this real. Our case study on the Jakarta Reclamation Project is a perfect example of how all these forces, state power, winners, losers, resistance, all slam into each other in the real world. So here's the setup. A massive project gets greenlit to create new land by filling in part of Jakarta's Bay. Through its policies and permits, the state basically set up private developers to be the big winners, while the local fishing communities who had lived there for generations, they were about to lose everything. I mean, look at this. This is that beneficiary versus burden bearer dynamic in crystal clear detail. The private developers, they stood to gain incredibly valuable new land for fancy commercial projects. And the small-scale fishermen, they were facing the total loss of their fishing grounds, which was not just their source of income, it was their entire way of life. The split couldn't be more extreme. So what did the fishing communities do? They didn't just roll over. They fought back with a really smart multi-pronged strategy. They went the legal route, challenging the project's permits in court. They launched a media campaign to get the public on their side. They built a coalition with powerful advocacy groups. And yes, they took to the streets to protest. They hit it from every angle. And the result? It actually worked.
All that pressure, coming from all those different directions, forced the government to hit the pause button. They issued a temporary moratorium on the project. It created an opening, a space for negotiation. Now, look, it didn't solve the problem overnight, but it was huge. It proved that even when you're in the structurally weaker position, organized resistance can get you real, tangible results.
So, this case study brings us right back to where we started, to our final and maybe most important reflection. It's this idea that conflict is logical, and understanding this gives us a completely new way to look at social tension. Let's look at this quote one more time. Conflict is the logical consequence of a power relationship that is never balanced between the state and its citizens. After everything we've looked at, from the theory of state power to the real-world fight in Jakarta, this idea probably hits a lot different now, right? So what's the big takeaway? It's this. The next time you see a protest on the news, or a big political battle brewing, you can look past the noise. You can understand that what you're seeing isn't just random chaos. It's a symptom. It's a symptom of those deeper, structural root causes, of an imbalance in how power, benefits, and burdens are handed out in society. And that leaves us with a couple of really tough questions to chew on. Is stability always a good thing, especially if that stability is just preserving a system that's deeply unfair? And on the flip side, is conflict always a bad thing, especially if it's the only way for marginalized people to finally make their voices heard? That's the lens this framework gives us to see the world.